timeless voices of the eternal church.
The role of suffering. But we often shy away from martyr stories because we are troubled by suffering. How could a good God allow so many innocent children to die of starvation in Somalia? Why didn't God protect the young Pakistani girl who was killed by her family simply for declaring that she wanted to be a Christian? Why are ethnic enclaves slaughtering each other in countries and cities all over the world, defending their turf rather than learning to live and let live? Here in the Western world, we have been exempt from much of the extreme suffering that stalks the poor in underdeveloped countries. We get hungry, we eat. We have a headache, we take a pill. It snows, we buy a winter jacket. We have a grievance, we can take it to court. Even on a spiritual level, we claim our blessings in Christ by praying for help, for healing, for financial blessing. This is not wrong. No one wants to suffer. We can and should be grateful to God for His abundant blessings. But our insulation from suffering is not always healthy spiritually. A young woman from Madison, Wisconsin, just out of her teens, wrote to a friend after several short-term mission trips to China. In many ways, the church in China puts our Western church to shame. There is great persecution against Christians, yet there is also boldness and passion for Jesus among the church. No, it would not be a fun thing to be persecuted, yet persecution leaves no room for complacency or lukewarmness. God uses the persecution of Christians there to purify His bride, to refine them as gold. They have no choice but to completely rely on Jesus and His power, and as a result of their reliance, they are seeing miracles like those from the book of Acts. The dead are being raised, the sick are being healed, the demon-possessed are being delivered. What would persecution do to our faith? Are we so conditioned to the comfort, our rights, getting a fair deal, and protecting our interests that we can't comprehend, turn the other cheek, or pray for those who despitefully use you? After all, where is God if we can't call on Him to bail us out of a tight corner? The book of Daniel tells the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who are given an ultimatum: bow the knees and worship the Babylonian king as God, or get thrown into a furnace so hot it killed the unlucky thieves who built the fire. Their answer to the king is a beautiful statement of ultimate trust in God's love, power, and sovereignty over life and death. O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it. He will rescue us from your hand, O King. But even if He does not, we want you to know, O King, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Daniel 3 verses 16 to 17. Meditating on the lives of the martyrs helps us to remember that death is the worst the enemy can do to us, and is ultimately impotent. Christ has conquered death on the cross. Our call to faithfulness doesn't depend on whether or not God gets us out of a tight corner. Suffering and death, while seemingly tragic in an individual instance, may well fertilize God's overarching plan for the salvation of the world. The seeds that die bears much fruit. This is where the Christian departs radically from the so-called radical Islamic view of martyrdom. Sacrificial love for our enemies has more power to storm the gates of hell than revenge, violence, hate, or weapons of destruction. After all, Christ's sacrificial death on the cross, paying the price for our sin, showed the world the depth of God's love. As followers of Christ, we are invited to share the fellowship of His suffering, not because suffering is desirable, but because the way of the cross leads to life. As Bergman says in her essay, the advantage of spiritual force over the powers that oppose freedom of any kind is not its power to change circumstance. Rather, the advantage is its ability to respond to devastation by drawing on transcendent strength and perspective that imbues circumstance with meaning, removing the finality from the circumstance.
Reading from the complete book of Christian heroes, over 200 stories of courageous people who suffered for Jesus, compiled by Dave and Nita Jackson. This is the Eternal Church of Jesus Christ, the record.